from Science Daily, from Ecological Monographs, the peer-reviewed journal. Arctic has potential to alter the Earth's climate. Arctic land and seas account for up to 25% of the world's carbon sink. And now they have the first really well analyzed photographs of how much of the Arctic is melting. And it says, quote, in a new study in the journal Ecological Monographs, ecologists estimate that Arctic land and oceans are responsible for up to 25% of the global net sink atmospheric carbon dioxide. Under current predictions of global warming, this Arctic sink could be diminished or reversed, potentially accelerating predicted rates of climate change. In their peer-reviewed paper, Dr. David McGuire of the U.S. Geological Survey and the University of Alaska at Fairbanks and his colleagues show that the Arctic has been a carbon sink since the end of the last ice age. Now, what does this mean in lay language? It means this. When the sun shines down and it hits snow or ice, it reflects back into the atmosphere. That's a good thing. That prevents global warming. But as that ice begins to shrink, and as the landmass becomes more, then what happens is that the sun hits the rock or the water and goes in and warms it and is held there. That causes the permafrost, meaning ground that's miles deep, that has been in permanent freeze for over 10,000 years. Now it starts to soften up, and methane gas begins to rise from it. And we have an enormous area, 3 times the size of the United States, in this permafrost in Russia, in the Ukraine, in the Arctic Circle, in Greenland, that is beginning to melt. And one of the largest areas, 25%, is in the Arctic. So as the Arctic warms up, as there's less snowpack, as there's less ice, more of the sun will penetrate into the ocean, into the land, warming it up and releasing methane, releasing carbon, increasing global warming. Now let me give you an example of this. When I was out in filming, and I'm filming, let's say, a mountain, 20 years ago, the snowpack, 3 feet, 2 feet, 5 feet thick, would be about 3,000 feet. Today, it's almost at 5,000 feet. Now what happens is that the bottom of the mountain starts to warm up. The warming goes right up the mountain. So then the ice that's above that begins to thaw real fast. Where normally it will take 9 months for snow to melt on a mountain, therefore releasing, starting in the spring, releasing water slowly. So you have water coming off the mountain into the gullies and into the streams, into the rivers over a period of 6 months. It then is used for irrigation and replenishing aquifers. That's a good thing. Now imagine that that water no longer is doing it slowly but all at once. And it starts to release massive amounts of water all at once. You have massive flooding. It doesn't fill aquifers, it doesn't fill canals, it can't be used for irrigation, it's wasted, but causing devastation, mudslides, and flooding in its path. If you go to the Himalayas, which is one of the largest sources of water for more people than anywhere else in the world, more people get their drinking water, their living water, from the Himalayas than any other place on Earth. And it's now melting faster. The ice pack is going higher. So you have to go a further distance up the mountain before you see ice pack. Now they actually have in Switzerland, and you now see types of plants growing and flowers growing and shrubs growing that could never have survived in the harsh and cold temperatures of just 20 years ago. Now you sometimes will see an additional half a mile up a hill before you hit that ice. So you've got all kinds of things growing. That may seem like a good thing. Gee whiz, now look at this meadow. This meadow is all green, where before it was all snow. That's not good, because that mountain is what a lot of water came from. So now China and India both get their water off this whole range of the Himalayas. Now there's less water. And there's going to be less and less water. And between China and India, you're talking about 2.5 billion people, over 1/3 of the world's population. So when I hear people who are so misinformed, and not just misinformed, but arrogance is bridled their misinformed position. They have a contempt for good science. And they seem to have hardened their resolve that there is no such thing as legitimate man-made concern about global warming, or global warming doesn't exist at all, because if it did, then we wouldn't have an increase in population of polar bears. This type of supercilious argument, to me, is just reprehensible. Well, separately and lastly, on this, over 65-year-olds, you should be taking high doses of vitamin D to prevent falls. And this is from Science Daily. 1,000 units reduces the risk of falling among older people by 19%. That's according to the British Medical Journal study. I believe we should be taking vitamin D2 and vitamin D3 at 3,000 units a day. And therefore we could help our bodies tremendously. I'm Gary Null, back in a moment with a whole lot more, including coming up how to protect yourself and supercharge your immune system in case you're working around people who have the flu, so you don't become a victim. Please stay with us.